Good evening, Des Moines, Iowa. Welcome to Doc and Lefty here at the beautiful webcast1live.com studios in sweltering, sultry downtown Des Moines. My name is Blake Labinas. I'm the resident Lefty, and here across the table is my partner in crime, my main man, the hostess with the mostest, Dr.
Great.
Patrick Pedroche.
Oh, yeah. Now it's a slam against my machoism. Now I'm the hostess. Oh, my goodness.
I said that to rhyme, Doc. I said that to rhyme. I didn't think that you'd pick up on the fact that I said I meant host with the mostest.
There you go.
He's the hostest.
Well,
that was a superlative. That was not a gender diminutive, as those things are rendered.
Well, I would call it the broaster oven of Des Moines.
It's pretty bad.
Oh yeah.
I gotta say, you remember that parking lot behind my office?
Oh yeah.
I always get so upset because a lot of those tenants park in my spot and aren't moved by the time I get to work, but because the landlord is giving us such a break on the rent, I don't feel right about having him tow anybody.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't do it anyway because I'm a nice guy. But so I moved over into the other old spot that's right by the door underneath that tree. And I got to tell you, getting into my car was not as much of a chore as it has been the last 2 years.
Get a little bit of a shade in there. It
was awesome. It was fantastic. But no, it's really, really hot. We're here on I Have a Dream Eve. That's all anybody wants to talk about. But we have other things on the agenda. We'll talk about some of the events probably next week after we've had a chance to digest them. But
I actually have a family story about this. My brother Mike was in speech class here in Des Moines. He was in Des Moines. He was just a little kid, probably 8 or 9 years old, and he got up and he gave Martin Luther King's "I Have a Dream" speech, and he got a C because the teacher didn't like the content. And that has been a story in my family ever since that time. And of course, it's probably the only C my brother Mike ever got ever.
Wow.
Right? And I remember kind of laughing because I was going to do the same thing for my speech. My mom told me that story and I went, really? Yeah, that's what happened. So then later
didn't like the content.
Yeah.
Boy.
So, and the truth of the matter is race is always going to be an issue in the U.S. All we need are people that will stand up and say, I don't see color out there. I see Americans. Honest. That's really what we need. Morgan Freeman said it best because he was talking about race last year, right when Trayvon Martin, that whole thing actually happened, not the trial. And he basically said, we need to start seeing people and not colors. So that's my thing about Martin Luther King.
Well, that's always sort of like the and we could talk about this for a few minutes because it's also a little bit relevant, and I know that you probably didn't watch it. I certainly didn't watch it live. It was all over my Facebook, but the whole Miley Cyrus thing at the Video Music Awards. But I read a really interesting article written by a blogger and a journalist for, I think, Jezebel.com, because there was backlash against it, and then there was backlash, as happens all the time with the internet. There's backlash against the backlash. Basically, where a bunch of feminists coming out and saying, "Hey, don't slut shame Miley. It's that you can't do if she wants to act this way as long that neo-feminist kind of argument where where you're trying to sort of place female sexuality into a slut box, basically, is what they were saying. That was the wrong move to do, and I tend to agree with that particular sentiment. This article actually took it from the racial, because what Miley has been doing over the past several months is kind of appropriating some of the ratchet twerking culture that's kind of popular with a subset of African American youth at this point in time, and really going on and on about that, about how her sort of I don't know,
twerkability,
her performance, what on a sort of a national, really like a public stage like that, was really problematic from racial grounds. And I don't want to get it too much into that because we have other things that we want to talk about. But I do find it interesting that all of this is kind of bubbled up. And I think that really at this point, the biggest racial problem that we have in this country, other than the gigantic disparities in prisoner inmate populations and social welfare programs that sometimes do more to to hurt than help, and also when they're not funded correctly, do more to hurt than help by different politicians with agendas. I think that we have to recognize that there are cultural aspects to race that often kind of complicate the issue more than just the color of your skin. And those sensitivities are what people really get up in arms about. And I think that there are a lot of folks saying, hey, well, what does it mean when you're acting white? Or what does it mean when you're acting black? And those sort of confusing arguments really kind of tend to exacerbate controversy.
Well, and I agree with with the sentiments you expressed. Now I figured being a media person, I should probably watch the show, and I did on YouTube where she got up there and twerked herself pretty good. Mm-hmm. I guess that's the way you say it. And the bottom line is it just wasn't, from my perspective, it just wasn't a good performance. And I happen to like, a lot of Miley Cyrus's stuff. She sings a lot of country tunes, and I like that. But the bottom line is it was, don't get me wrong, it was shocking, but it was shocking in its failure to be good from my perspective. I understand what twerking is. I work with kids all the time, so I know. And she didn't do a good job of twerking, right? I mean, there's a certain way you have to do it so it looks good, and she didn't do that. And then humping the finger there, not even Lady Gaga does that. Not even Madonna did that, all right? So you're talking about a performance that really wasn't that good. Plus, she was sticking her tongue out of her mouth all the time. And it was much more of a distraction. Music is about music. And you can back me up. It's supposed to be about the music. It's not supposed to be a distraction. Well, she was a distraction to her music. So when you're trying to listen to the music, trying to enjoy that, you're distracted by her tongue hanging out all the time. And I'm sure it's something that she planned out and something that they all went over in choreography, and nobody told her, listen, Miley, this sucks. I think that's just what happened.
Well, I mean, I don't know. You found it shocking. I found it shocking that I wasn't shocked because I'm sort of used to this kind of thing from folks who give these kinds of performances nowadays. I don't think there's anything particularly. I think that sort of the Madonna performance with Touched by a Virgin back in the day was more shocking in that context than this was in 2013. I just didn't really see.
Well, yeah, but even back then with Spears and Aguilera, it was more titillating than anything else. The entire song was not focused on them kissing.
No, I was talking about the original when she came out in the dress and did and crawled around on the stage. It just that given back in the 80s. I mean, that was shocking for that time. This was just, I found it just kind of par for the course. But in pop music, the performance of a song with the stage show and everything else is as much a part of the song as the actual piece of music itself. And if that's what she wants her song to be about, she's 20 years old. She's got a pretty, in my opinion, a fairly immature idea about an immature attitude about what she's trying to do. And personally, reading the racial context article that I read this morning, while I'm not going to comment one way or the other, although a lot of people have come out and said that the performance itself was racist, I'm not so certain that Miley was conscious of it, which isn't that's not a get out of jail free card, but it also kind of puts things into perspective that maybe she's just a dumb kid who, probably needs to have her priorities checked a little bit.
Yeah, a little bit. Anyway, we'll be back right after the break. You're listening to Doc and Lefty on webcast1live.com. We're here every Tuesday from 6 to 7 p.m. Frank, take us away.
Petrosh & Associates, how can I help you?
Petrosh & Associates will provide you with a friendly, caring, and confidential place to find help for mental health concerns. We are ready for your call. Our doctor, Dr. J. Patrick Petrosh, provides a full range of psychiatric services for children, adolescents, and adults in a forthright and informative manner while maintaining a casual, comfortable, and relaxed atmosphere.
Drug and alcohol addiction slowly steals a person's identity, tearing away pieces of their life little by little until one day it seems like the hope of a happy future is gone and there's no chance of getting it back. Here at St. Gregory Retreat Centers, we can assure you that there is hope. Our unique approach to recovery begins with the understanding that the dysfunction and damage caused by addiction can be overcome, not just dealt with. Don't let another day go by. Call St. Gregory today.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
Hey, welcome back, everybody. Sorry to kind of take a trip down the MTV VMAs road. I didn't think that maybe we would do that. I didn't think that we were going to do that when I get in the studio today, but it was something that kind of like popped up, and we're going to comment on things like that from time to time. However, the big deal, the big firestorm over the weekend, I think it was, what was it, Friday? Or when was it?
Well, I first heard about it on Sunday.
On Sunday. In the last couple of days.
Have to clarify. I think I know where you're going.
We'll get there. But the big thing in our ongoing 1,800 part series about the split in the Iowa Republican Party, friend of the show, state senator from Urbandale, Brad Zahn, had some interesting things to say about, if you haven't heard about this already, State Senator Ken Sorensen's ongoing worsening and probably nose-diving scandal about the payments that he allegedly received from the Paul campaign to switch his allegiance from Michelle Bachmann, and then Michelle Bachmann's payments to him that were improper in some context that no one's ever really been able to adequately explain to me, but that they have him on tape talking to some people about this, asking if people know about it. He says the tapes are doctored. It's a whole big thing. Brad Zahn came out and was asked a question on another radio show, I believe.
WHO, I believe.
WHO in the last couple of days. And Doc, what happened?
Well, and keep in mind, we know and love Brad Zahn pretty well here. And he's been a good guy and a great supporter of Republican causes. But he came right out and said, listen, Kent Sorensen has become a cancer in our party. Now, here's the truth. None of us know everything that's went on. We don't know, from my perspective, the switches that he made during the Bachmann campaign, the Paul campaign, all that stuff is really rather suspicious. But for Senator Zahn to come out and say it in such a direct fashion, I think is a problem. Now, my problem is I have the quote here in front of me. However, I don't have my glasses, so I can't quite read it. But basically, he said the scandal with Kent Sorensen is a distraction for the Republicans and is adding fuel to the fire and gives the Democrats more edge.
I'll try and pull that up here, Doc, and see if we can't get the entire quote. Now, we did. I believe that you gave the senator a call today to see if he'd want to come on and talk about it, and he declined. Am I wrong?
Yes, he declined. He said that and of course you can imagine, once he said it and it got reported, everybody and their brother just went, "Hey, Brad, come on our show." And basically he told me, listen, there's other things to talk about, more important things to talk about besides this distraction. Now I have here's the exact quote. They asked him, they asked him what would you do? How would you advise Ken Sorensen? Basically was the question. I know the answers to many of the allegations, he said. He told WHO TV's Dave Price. I'm part of the police investigation in Urbandale, as well as the ethics investigation there in the Iowa Senate. With that said, I think it's been a big distraction to the Senate Republicans, and I would agree with Senators Chigrin and Whitver that he needs to resign. And when Dave Price asked him if he meant that Sorensen resign now or once the ethics investigation has been concluded, Zahn reaffirmed his position by saying, "I know answers. I think Senator Zorin should resign." The problem is you can't if this was let's just lay it out there. If this was a Democratic scandal, everybody go, "Oh, I'm bad." The person involved will say, "Hey, listen, I made a mistake. I'm sorry," and then everything will blow over.
Oh, hey,
but Republicans really don't do that.
I just wanted to make one thing clear. It wasn't Senator Zahn that used the cancer terminology. It was Senator Bowdler.
Oh, that's right, Clell. I
Yes.
misspoke. I apologize to my good friend Senator Zahn.
Yes, we'll have to
sometimes
have
I
him
get-
on and maybe buy him
See,
a cup
but
of
if
coffee.
he'd been on the show,
Yeah.
right?
It was
he could've
Senator.
clarified.
Yeah, it was Senator Baudler that says he's cancer in our party, and if you cut it out, you have and you cut it out if you have a cancer in there. Senator Zahn said several times that he thinks that Ken Sorensen should resign, and that if members of Senator Sorensen's family had accepted payments from the Paul campaign, that would be a violation of the ethics rules, so on and so forth. So now you're saying something about the Democrats who have not had this problem in a while in Iowa.
They've had this problem. It hasn't been in a while. That's true.
It's been a little while ago.
Yep.
So what are you're saying the Democrats would do what?
Democrats basically get up there, they hang their heads, they say, yeah, I did something shameful, I'm sorry, and then the media forgives it and moves on. I mean, that's essentially what happens. Not all the time, but essentially. But Republicans have this way of, once somebody has screwed something up, of being completely unforgiving of that error. And that's just the way it goes. I don't know if it's the media pressure. I mean, Todd Aiken down in Missouri, he said something stupid. Let's just face it, it was stupid and wrong to say. And the Republicans just try to eliminate our best chance of getting a Senate seat down there. And so Republicans are guilty of that. I mean,
or you're talking about the party itself.
The party itself
has an issue. I mean, I think that I kind of look at it more as political opportunism, I guess. And I'm not going to impute that onto Senator Zahn because I think that his comments were pretty responsible. Yes. And I think if you're going to be asked a direct question, and he's a guy, if you've seen him on this show before or talked to him ever, he's a guy that if you ask him a question, he'll give you an answer, and he's never going to politic you ever. Now, declining to come on and comment about it, you perfectly respect that because he's still got a job to do. He's got a startup that he's working on, and he's got to be back in session here in
any minute now.
At the end of the summer, basically is when they get
next couple of weeks.
When they get started. So for him to not want to talk about it very much, especially when it's something that I feel after reading the quote is a very responsible kind of answer. I haven't studied this particular scandal, and it is a scandal at this point, very much, except in some of the news reporting that's gone on about it. Usually when tape comes out, you don't double down. Usually. Yeah. Now, the one glaring example that kind of contradicts what I just said is the guy from Quebec that was videotaped smoking crack in some hotel room, and everybody knows that it's him, and he kind of confirms that it's him, and then he comes out and says that wasn't him, and they're lying, and they're just setting me up.
Yeah.
Okay, fella. But this has got Senator Sorensen talking to, I don't think it's his attorney, I think it's some friend of his. Yeah. Or a campaign advisor about whether or not he should give the checks back, who knows about it.
All that stuff.
Yeah.
So, there's a tape out there. They settled with that one gal that they stole that list off of her computer with. He never admitted wrongdoing or anything else like that. The one thing he did say, just like you mentioned, I'm being set up. The tape was doctored somehow. Now, I'm going to tell you, I've been a victim of that because if you go out there and you look at my microchip comment thing, there you can find it. I can tell you right now, it's been edited, and they edited it very cleverly, and it's very well done because the entire thing that I did wasn't any more than 20 seconds, right? So anyway, I believe that could be it. Now we're going to come back. We're going to take a quick break. I'm going to talk about the Polk County GOP right here because we have all kinds of stuff coming up with Polk County GOP. That's their, now if you go to polkgop.org, you get the people in Florida. So you have to go to polkgop.com. There's the number 280-6438. They have the picnic coming up September 7th that we have been invited to as press people. Exciting. I actually have your press pass still. And everybody who's running for Senate on the Republican side is going to be there. Brad Zahn's going to be there. Of course, our good friend Daryl Carney. Most likely Tom Shaw is going to be there. There's going to be all kinds of people there. The governor's going to be there, Lieutenant Governor, and that's going to be fantastic. And then they have a fall dinner coming up, and I believe it's November 12th. And they have a headliner, Rick Perry, is coming in to do that. So we're pretty excited about all that going on. We will. Oh, so now we're going to get back to Kent Sorensen. Also, you can call in. There's a number up there on the screen as soon as Frank gets it up there. It's 855-244-0077. You can text me 515-988-2585, or you can email or come in and chat. Now I just got a message from one of our listeners text wise that says our website has gone kablooey, that he can't get it on his computer or his iPad. So I figured I'd let Frank know that because, when you're on radio, you just have to be flexible. Now, getting back to Kent Sorensen, I believe this is a tremendous distraction for what people want to do moving forward. The governor is really trying to put together a coalition so he can run again in 2014. I'm sure he doesn't need 2014. I'm sure he doesn't need the distraction of, a major political problem. Because keep in mind, 2016, everybody's going to be coming back to Iowa. And the problem is if this continues to go on, it's going to have far-reaching impacts. Here you get a state senator, essentially bought and paid for lack of a better term, and I'm not trying to denigrate anybody, but basically you say, hey, listen, I'm going to support you. And you think about all the good people that are in politics. And I know people say there's no good people. There are good people in politics. We've met them. Mm-hmm. And the problem is there's Kent Sorensen. If all this turns out to be true, he's done something dastardly, something that has corrupted the process. And in the process has smeared the people that have helped him and support him. People like, Brad Zahn. You have other people like Tom Shaw that helped out in Michelle Bachmann's campaign. And then, you look at Michelle Bachmann, who has her own problems, and now she has this and had no control.
Well, she's out of politics now.
Yeah, she is out of politics. And you stop and you think, well, how much did this scandal impact her? How much did this, kind of hit on her? Because at the time it was right before the caucus. And here she is. And no, she wasn't surging in the polls.
No.
Newt Gingrich is really surging forward. But, you have to think, did that really kill it with him switching? And suddenly it took all the attention away from the issues and focused it right on Kent Sorensen and his switch nationally.
And you have to wonder why he did it right then. But honestly, she wasn't going to do better than Ron Paul no matter what because of how well Ron Paul did the last time around in Iowa.
And I agree.
Iowans love Ron Paul. I should say Iowan Republicans love Ron Paul. Iowan independents kind of see him as the lesser of three evils, I think, in a lot of cases, and he's not coming back. He's gonna Rand is gonna be here and probably win the Iowa nomination, but that's several years down the road. We have to talk about that at this point. But I guess I don't know from a standpoint for actually winning the Iowa caucus, the only positive numbers that Michelle Bachmann put up in Iowa were around the time she won the Ames straw poll. And I know that Doc loves the Ames straw poll. I've never been, but I understand that it's kind of a fun thing to go to.
It's fun.
However, I don't think that you would disagree with me, Doc, if I were to say that any sort of national polling numbers that come out of the Ames straw poll with respect to a particular candidate are inflated and probably not very accurate, given the fact that you buy votes and you bribe people to vote for you by putting out good food and entertainment at your booth. And so it's kind of a sham indicator of a particular candidate's electoral strength, in my opinion. Now, Rick Santorum and Newt Gingrich surging right before caucus night, and all the flip-flops and not flip-flops, but all the different ups and downs that all the different candidates had going up to caucus night were an early indication of the unsettled nature of the Republican electorate. And Michelle Bachmann had her 5 minutes, and Newt had his slightly longer because I think he carried on into South Carolina a little bit, and all the different characters are going on at that earlier stage. And remember, Herman Cain was still in the race at that point, and so he had his few minutes here in Iowa. And I just don't think that the switch affected her campaign as much, except to make it look more disorganized than it already looked from outside observers. And so then you wonder, well, then why do you do it? And the only logical explanation is money.
Yeah, and I would agree with that assessment. And don't get me wrong. Yeah, I agree with what you said. She wasn't going to beat Ron Paul. She wasn't. So there's no reason to leave her campaign because leaving a sinking ship. Well, yeah, sure. If it looks like you have no shot, but you had a shot, but now you don't have a shot. She never had a shot. They came out and supported her, right? And I don't want to ascribe motivations to anybody, especially Senator Zahn,
when we don't know.
And especially when we don't know, but I don't want to disparage anybody. But a lot of times what people will do is they'll pick a runner that, they do like, but are fairly certain they're not going to, win. And that way they can avoid the political infighting, the mud throwing, all the really nasty stuff that comes with being the front runner. I mean, look at how they tore apart each front runner in the media. And the problem really boiled down to character, as far as I'm concerned. If you promise somebody your support, even if they're not going to win, I mean, this really is not literally a sinking ship, right? There's a way to do it. You don't just bail out right before the caucuses when it would do the most damage, right? Senator Zahn supported Michelle Bachmann and stuck with her. He didn't bail out on her, but Sorensen did. And really the behavior at the time was so bizarre, it did make national, I mean, don't get me wrong, she's running for president, but it made national media, and it hasn't gone away. It has continued to be in the spotlight. And so I don't know if anything that went on, but Senator Zahn claims that he knows the answers and is encouraging Sorensen to step down. And I believe at this point, whether you're guilty or not, as a state senator, you need to stop and take a careful evaluation of who you're going to damage and if you're going to be able to effectively represent your district, which is down there in my old stomping grounds in Indianola.
Right. Well, and I think that you're absolutely right. And we see this in politicians all the time, where something happens that's adverse to the brand they've tried to create for themselves, and they try and hang on regardless of the facts or common sense. We see it in New York with Anthony Weiner. We see it, and I probably shouldn't go there because I'm not trying to compare anything. No. It's apples and oranges, and this isn't. I mean, there are dumb scandals, and then there are more serious ones. And I think that this is a more serious issue because it has less to do with just an honesty problem and more to do with whether or not you've got a guy who is willing to be on the take for somebody. And we don't really even know. And this is what makes it even tough to talk about. We still don't really know what it is they were paying for. I mean, Ken Sorensen was the leader of the Republican Party. That fine, he was kind
of poster child for the neocons.
Yeah, he had a leadership role in the sort of the more conservative members of the state house. But I mean, what? So he's the national campaign, or he's the Iowa campaign chair. Fine. Ron Paul had an Iowa campaign. What's he paying for? I mean, I don't think that swung any votes, really. No, folks that were going to vote for Ron Paul voted for Ron Paul.
I don't think so either. I think that they were just trying to. I don't know why they would try to embarrass Michelle Bachmann. At that point, the media had been after her so much, she'd been embarrassing herself on a regular basis. So I don't understand. I don't understand what it was outside of money, because Ken Sorensen at the time couldn't have gotten any more prestigious in Iowa politics.
Yep. And
now, interestingly enough, the one person who has not called for his resignation is Branstad. And that's because I believe he's just trying to stay out of the mud.
Well, I think so too, but I also think that it's a savvy move for a guy that doesn't need to talk about it. He's the governor. He can just say, you know what, there's a Senate investigation. That's another branch of government. We don't have to worry about it. I'm worried about running the state from the executive branch.
Absolutely.
Once that a scandal, if a scandal pops up with one of my folks in the executive department, I'll comment then. But as for now, let's let the General Assembly handle their own matters, and I'll do my own thing. I think that's what he's done, and this is not his first rodeo. He knows what to do in these kinds of situations.
That's right. So holy cow, we have a Facebook. Wow. Terrific.
Well,
and today I think we actually have our website up. We're going to be back right after the break. You're listening to Doc and Lefty on webcast1live.com. I want to thank all of our listeners for tuning in. We'll be back right after the break.
I'm Brian Leach, owner and general manager of Service Legends. I brought along a couple of the home comfort heroes.
Hi, I'm Tammy Wells.
I am Nick Wondershide.
I'm administrative manager
I am the senior technician.
from Service Legends.
It seems like every good thing, when you feel it to the bone that it's good, there's a lot of hard work put behind it. I don't think that you can fake it and have it turn out good.
You know, if we seem like, okay, that's just weird, it's just a furnace, why would you believe so deeply in a furnace? It's not just that, you know, we want to show the world that you can have good service.
Yeah, I mean, it's got to be, it's your home.
You know, it's built into our daily trainings, it's built into our culture, that we're gonna do whatever it takes to have each client say they love us, period.
That's why we spend all the hours in the training that we do. And if we guarantee it's going to be a good experience for you, or else it's free, what type of work do you think we're going to do?
There is a guarantee.
Temperature selection guarantee, fixed rider it's free guarantee, comfort guarantee, best value guarantee. All of these guarantees hold us accountable to ensuring that we exceed your expectations. And if for whatever reason we'd fail and we can't make it right, we guarantee all of those guarantees with a 100% money back guarantee.
I mean, if you don't think that your technician can fix it right, are you gonna say that to a client? No.
You don't have to worry about having a technician come to your house.
We drug test, background check all of our team members. We put safe people in your home. Each and every one of our service techs, 400 hours a year in training.
You tell it the minute they walk in the door. They know what they're doing, they've done their homework, and they actually truly care about what you want.
Because at the end of the day, you're the person that makes sure I have a job.
They're gonna be listening. They're gonna wanna know what your challenges are. Then they're gonna come and give you options, and you get to choose.
If I'm there to help and I make it easy and painless, I did my job right that day.
Well, when it comes to your comfort, safety, and your family, you know, you don't necessarily go buy the most expensive, but you get the most bang for your buck.
Oh, it's worth it, because there's a lot of people that will find a way to get it to work right now and then leave and then come back, charge you again, and the cycle just repeats itself. So when I'm out there looking at the furnace, I want to find why it failed today. How can we change the part today with something that you're not going to have to worry about? Is it worth changing the part today? I mean, you can put a lot of money into a furnace. I can fix parts all day. There's good job security in that for me, but is it the right thing for you?
I get a lot of the phone calls of after the technicians are there. They're just in awe. They're like, wow, you guys are great. I mean, I don't even know what to say. You guys are great. Everything you did was perfect. It was great.
Keep going though, I like this.
Just give us a try. I'm gonna take all the risk.
I've got the time to make this right. I've got the support to make it right.
Just check us out.
And if you don't see the value in what we do,
I mean, fixed rider, it's free or 100% money back.
enough said.
Hey, welcome back, everybody. Thanks for sticking around for the first half hour. I think that we probably, at least for today, put the local politics to bed. There's not a whole lot else that, I mean, there's always stuff going around Iowa, but just not anything that we really felt the need to talk about today. Wish everybody involved in that investigation, luck and that they figure out what the facts are, because it certainly seems bad for the senator, but these things have a way of working themselves out one way or the other, where in a year from now, we still don't know everything and we could be completely wrong. So, and with that, thanks for wasting the first half hour, because we didn't provide sort of clarity at all. But the next,
it wasn't a waste. We covered a lot of ground.
We did cover a lot of ground. But if we're talking about cans of worms here, I think that the big can of worms, the big meaty can of worms that's on everybody's minds right now, especially on our leaders' minds right now, is Syria and the absolute disaster that civil war, which is going on 2 years now, has caused everybody.
Yeah.
So, I mean, Doc, what's the latest?
Well, the latest is that Obama is preparing everybody to send troops in. Now, I don't know how that's going to go. I don't know how they're going to make that decision. The problem really is he took what he thought was a pretty safe approach, and that is, people wanted him to take a stand on something as far as Syria went, because there was all kinds of atrocities on either side. So he drew this line in the Senate and said, "Well, we won't tolerate chemical weapons." Well, for the last 6 months, we've been getting reports that chemical weapons are being used. First, we got a report that, it was Bashir al-Assad, and then it was the rebels, and then it was just a certain faction in the rebels. No, it's all of them. And we've been getting reports like this back and forth the entire way. Al-Assad finally said, well, listen, I'm going to let the UN come in and inspect, because it isn't us using them, which of course, was a big embarrassment way back when, because that's about when the first time the chemical weapons were used. That's when Obama went in there and said, listen, we're not going to tolerate that. We'll take him out. Well, it turns out it wasn't him that did it. So the UN has been in there. The problem is within the last few days, they've left the sites of the chemical attacks because they've come under sniper fire. Well, who's doing that? Is that al-Assad's troops, or is it the rebels? Nobody's been able to figure that out. And you have to keep in mind, when we talk about the rebels, it isn't like our Civil War where we had the North and the South, and that was it. And we just simply had two uniforms, blue and gray. You have at least 6 different rebel groups over there. Some really radical Muslims, some, more moderate Muslims. They're all fighting for the same thing. And the third thing we need to remember over there is majority of Syrians don't want to see al-Assad to go. Majority of Syrians, according to the polls, want him to stay. So, don't get me wrong. It's not a 99% want him to stay. It's more like, 55% want him to stay. But the bottom line is there's a split over there that really, and this is the fourth point, this isn't our fight. Get back to my original point. He said we can't tolerate chemical weapons. There is now evidence from France and Germany, and I believe the UK, that all say he used chemical weapons. And now, instead of trying to build a UN or NATO consensus to go in, he's just going with our allies over there, Germany, France, and Great Britain. And this reminds me an awful lot of 2000, 2001, when Bush was in the same kind of position. And he tried to get UN backing and didn't get it, tried to get NATO backing and barely got it. And then very soon it just evolved into a coalition that they put together to invade Iraq.
Well, there's a lot of things that are different in the sense that, one, the coalition of the willing was not really much of a coalition at all. There were, he really didn't. He didn't get NATO backing in the sense that France didn't participate. Germany didn't put troops into Iraq. It was the UK. It was the UK, Australia. Like Canada had a few folks. Australia had a few folks. It was mostly the United States and the UK.
Is different doesn't mean it's not the same. Doesn't bring back ghosts of Iraq.
Well, I know it certainly does. I don't want to say that reports about WMD that are ill confirmed does not remind and unconfirmed reports of chemical weapons being used on civilians. It sounds a whole lot like Iraq. Don't get me wrong. I think it's a bad idea, but I just want to point out a couple of different things. The major issue, first of all, there hasn't been a UN meeting there hasn't been a Security Council meeting about this yet. He's just, and he hasn't also, and the president also hasn't done anything yet. The General Hagel, Secretary Hagel, and some of the generals are talking about limited cruise missile strikes, blah blah blah, maybe starting on Thursday. But there hasn't been as far as I know, there hasn't been a UN meeting that's convened on this just yet, because everybody knows that Russia will veto anything that happens anyway.
Well, yeah, the big five haven't met, but there's been several security meetings, and including one where our UN ambassador didn't make it.
Right. So because no one really knows what to do, because the reports just started coming out on the 21st and after then, because that's when it sort of happened, and all the YouTube clips started showing up late last week and then over the weekend. Number two, we have a major Arab partner in this. Saudi Arabia wants us to go in. Yes. Saudi Arabia is done with this, and they're ready for us to take some action. In fact, they've been pressuring the Obama administration since it started coming out. And you've got all kinds of religious leaders from different Arab countries coming out and saying, we've got to do something. We've got to do something. He's killing. And it's going to devolve into sectarianism, because it always does over there, it seems like, whenever this stuff starts to happen. But he's killing Sunnis, he's killing Shia, he's killing everybody. We've got to go and do something about it. And so that's much different than the misadventure into Iraq, where we had no Arab support whatsoever when we invaded Iraq.
Well, but that's not true. We had the support of the Saudis, and we had the support of the Kuwaitis. We had their support. Yeah, we certainly did. Where do you think we put our bases? I mean,
neither of those called for us to go into Iraq. It was a unilateral decision.
Well,
none of us wanted to.
We'll
none of them.
that on a different show. Will remain because we did have their support. I mean, because Kuwait's sitting right on the border of Saudi Arabia, and Saudi Arabia didn't want Saddam Hussein to come blowing in here, blowing into Saudi Arabia.
Are you talking about 1991 or in 2003? Because in 1991 it was different.
All right, you're right. I was talking about 1991. So let's get back to Syria.
Yeah. Well, all I'm saying is that it's different in that there seems to be more regional consensus about the necessity of other foreign countries getting involved. That's what it seems like just from the surface.
Well, yeah, but Jordan has come right out and said we're not going to allow anybody to attack Syria from our land. Iraq has come out and said nobody is taking a shot at Syria from our land. The Lebanese have stated unequivocally, if the Americans go into Syria, we are going to start taking and killing Americans as hostages. So, to have the Saudis say, well, yeah, we want you to come in, where are we going to go from? The Turks have remained desperately quiet because that's about the only other place you can go into, So the Turks are quiet. They're not going anywhere.
The Arab League wants us to attack.
And the Russians have come out and unequivocally said, we have proof that it's the rebels using weapons of mass destruction. That's what the Russians have said here within the last 24 hours. And they have said, we're going to protect our interests in al-Assad, and now we're going to have to take on a power that has the ability to shoot missiles at us. Really? There's nothing over there that's going to benefit us in any way, except if we don't go, because we said we're going to go, chemical weapons are used. If we don't go, now we're bluffing, right? And that puts any future programs that the United States tries to say, or the president tries to say, in jeopardy. Now we're running just a little bit behind. We're going to be back right after this break. We're going to be talking more about Syria and how we need to not be in there. We'll be back right after the break. Listen to Doc and Lefty on webcast1live.com.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
Whether you're 10, 25, 50, 80 years old and beyond, everyone needs to live within their means. I'm Tom Coates with Consumer Credit of America. For almost a quarter of a century, we've helped people of all ages learn to manage their personal finances to benefit them far into the future. When problems arise, we've got the experience you need to make those debt problems go away. Got financial problems? Call Consumer Credit of America.
If Tom Coates from Consumer Credit of America was your personal webmaster, Tom would filter out all bad debt emails. If Tom was your mailman, you'd never get any debt reduction junk mail. If Tom Coates was a lineman, he'd block any phone calls offering to reduce your credit card debt.
Hi, I'm Tom Coates with Consumer Credit of America, and we're still your best choice for credit counseling. We're local, we're accountable, and we can do more. You make the call when the time's right for you.
When it comes to competition, there really is none for Consumer Credit of America.
Hey, welcome back, everybody. We're talking about Syria and the absolute nightmare scenario that seems to be playing itself out all over again. I fully expect that on Thursday morning or maybe even Wednesday night that to see another president walk down the red carpet from the West Wing, stand at the podium, and tell the American people that he's sending limited strike capabilities into Syria. Right now, they're just talking about cruise missiles from the coasts that can reach airports and different strategic things to kind of prevent the Assad regime from doing what everyone kind of thinks that they're doing. But man, it in thinking about it, it feels a lot like 2003. It feels a lot like Iraq again, where but in this instance, there's a big difference from the justification that's being thrown at us from all sides this time around. Back in 2003, WMD, we got to get them there before they come here. They had ties to Al Qaeda. They're selling yellow cake uranium. They're doing all that stuff. And then it wasn't until later that, hey, it's this humanitarian mission and that we're spreading democracy and we had to get Saddam out of there. That didn't happen until a couple of years later when the WMD thing fell down around their ears. This time around, the justification is He's massacring civilians. We've got to get him to stop. We've got to save this rebellion against a dictator, Arab Spring, democracy, so on and so forth. For me, Doc, you know that I've been on the record about this on every other conflict that we've ever talked about. It doesn't matter to me. It doesn't matter to me. It does not matter. Nothing justifies more killing, and that's what they're advocating. They're advocating a military strike against a population that is having a civil war. And while I say that, yes, it's terrible that you have a government massacring civilians, supposedly, even though there's a lot of evidence that says that they're doing it, there's a lot of evidence that says that the civilians are doing it themselves, all I can say is a military strike committing U.S. troops, committing any troops to this, denying the fact that there might have been a political solution a year and a half ago. There's no justification that will satisfy me that killing more people, that actually, mixing it up and starting a regional war, because that's what will happen. It will happen.
Well,
is a good reason to do this.
Well, one of the things that people forget about is these things don't happen in isolation. I have a map. I just did a Google search of the map for Syria. Syria has a coastline about that long, just north of Israel. All right. This can spill over to Israel very easily. They have what looks to be about 1,200 mile border with Turkey. Turkey has its own problems with the Kurds, which are one of the people that are fighting against al-Assad. There's Iraq right on one side and Jordan on the south side. So no matter what happens, you have these regimes that aren't all that stable, that just suffered through an Arab Spring.
None of them are stable.
And now you're going to go in there and start bombing these people? Iran has a vested interest in making sure that everything remains unstable, but they don't want that instability to impact them. Ahmadinejad just got voted out, and they have a new guy in there, and he's, compared to Ahmadinejad, is more moderate. Mm-hmm. But the bottom line is you have Israel, who said, if we get attacked, we're going in.
Yep.
There's no other way to it. So now you have this situation where nothing good is going to come from our involvement. If we go in, all it's really going to do is prove, well, listen, Obama's not a bluffer. He's going to use force to go in. But the problem is let's say you go in, you bomb al-Assad, and let's say you kill him in a drone strike. Now you have a problem. We've witnessed this problem in several different areas where we helped take out a dictator. Afghanistan, Iraq, Libya, Egypt, all these places are a big flaming hot mess. And we have no exit strategy. We have no idea of how we're going to do this after this all is over. So you're going to have to stop and go, well, hold on. Whoever we replace al-Assad with is going to be just as bad or worse.
Well, what's going to happen is that it's like we didn't learn anything from the last 15 years.
Yes.
It really is. I mean, as much heat as I took from Republicans for being against the Iraq war from the very beginning and thinking that it was a bad idea, and then basically, having been proven right over and over and over again over the last decade.
Strangely enough,
it's the same thing.
Chuck Grassley.
It's the same thing. It's the same thing again. We have, with, like I said, with the differences that there's a little bit more regional support this time around, but what is going to happen when we get involved and we say, hey, you know what? We got rid of this guy for you. Now let's have elections. And now let's have a democratic government. It hasn't worked in Iraq. It hasn't. It got a diplomat killed in Libya.
Yep.
It really did, because you are artificially taking out the power centers and leaving a vacuum that allows terroristic organizations who are already in the country fighting on the side of the rebels to take power.
Absolutely. Now, we're going to take a quick break. I'm going to talk to you more about Polk County GOP, but we're going to come right back to Syria and why it's important from the Russian perspective and from the Eastern perspective, why we shouldn't even go in there. Polk County GOP has done a lot here in Iowa. to advance the causes of, fiscal responsibility and, helping the people that they can. We're going to have Polk County GOP is going to have a giant fundraiser here September 7th out at Jalapeno Pete's at the fairground. Joni Ernst, who is a declared Senate candidate, Sam Clovis, David Young, both declared Senate candidates are going to be there. In fact, the entire Republican field is going to be there. Many of the Republican luminaries are going to be there. Senator Brad Zahn is going to be there. I think Tom Shaw. I think the governor and lieutenant governor are going to be showing up. And so it'll be a great party. If you want to come out, rub shoulders with these people, you can get tickets at polkgop.com. Or you can call them at 280-6438. Daryl Carney and Ryan Keller are the people you want to talk to. Again, that's Daryl Carney and Ryan Keller at Polk County GOP or polkgop.com. Man, I'm just focused on Syria.
Well, it's something that it's an important issue. Now, I want to ask you this question because this is the justification. They're killing civilians. This is not just a military issue; it's a human rights issue. What do you say about that?
I think it's a human rights issue as well. The problem is the UN already has troops on the ground apparently as peacekeepers, and of course being the UN, they're completely ineffective at this time. They apparently the last word I heard was that they actually sent 4 up armored SUVs to Syria to try to help secure foodstuffs and everything else. But the bottom line is, as soon as you drop the foodstuffs, well, on the one hand, if you drop it, the rebels can get it. And on the other hand, if you give it to al-Assad, he controls it so much that only the people that are going to be directly supporting him, his people, are going to get it. The common folks aren't going to get this aid. And that's what happens everywhere. It happened in Yemen, happened in Ethiopia, it happened everywhere. You have these warlords, like you pointed out the last segment. You have these warlords that are going to go forward and just start killing all their rivals once al-Assad is out of the way.
Yep.
It happens every time. The Muslim Brotherhood, same thing. They keep trying to blame the Coptic Christians. This time it backfired, right? But that's what happens. Now, the Russians have a vested interest in trying to keep people in power that are going to reduce terrorism directed at Russia. You have to keep in mind a lot of these terrorist cells get trained by Chechnyan fighters. And there are Chechnyan forces in Syria. Plus, Turkey sits right there. So Turkey has vested interest. So when you start talking about, well, we're going to arm the rebels, what you're basically saying is we're going to start arming some terrorists from the Russian perspective. Well, just like if they said, well, we're going to, start arming the Native Americans or the people that what do they call them? The preppers. We're going to start arming them and giving them tanks and weapons. Mm-hmm. We're not going to sit still for that. We're like, well, hold on. They might come after us. Well, it's the same thing over there. Now, I don't want to denigrate preppers or American Indians. I'm just saying it would be like that. It would be like taking people that don't like America here and saying we're going to arm them. I'm not saying I'm going to get myself into trouble. I apologize for offending everybody.
Well, no, you're just you're drawing a comparison that I think that probably isn't very likely, but by having you're talking about minority factions that might have a beef with the American government, and there certainly are a bunch of them.
Yeah.
But what we have here was we had a section of the population, and people have a hard time remembering this, that the Syrian protests started out just as a peaceful demonstration. A bunch of people peacefully demonstrating against some of the economic problems that were happening and sort of in solidarity with the rest of the Arab Spring that was going on around the region. And then there was a crackdown. And then they decided to arm themselves. And then there was a fight. And it just there was space had Bashar al-Assad been an actor in good faith, which he wasn't right from the beginning. There was time and space for a political resolution to all of this. But it escalated too quickly, and we were hamstrung by Russian and Chinese vetoes in the UN saying, "Hey, we don't want you negotiating with anybody directly," and for good or for ill, the Obama administration's approach to foreign policy is to say, "Well, the United States did so much bigfooting in the 2000s and racked up so much ill will and had so much criticism from the folks in Germany and France and wherever else that we're going to see what they have to say about it first. And I personally, while I don't think that probably has much to do or has a much good to say about America as a world power going forward, we're still the bully boy on the block, but it's right to the extent that we kind of stuck our foot in it with Iraq and gave ourselves a huge black eye that's only now starting to bruise. And it looks like the president who wanted to lead from behind through all this different stuff that had success doing that in other contexts now wants to punch himself right in the same bruised eye. Yeah. And because
of
it's really frustrating.
Al-Assad goes. Somehow he's out of there.
Yep.
Who are they going to look to help stabilize the region? They're going to look to us because we're the only ones that can afford to put boots on the ground. You can't control a country with drone strikes, and you can't control a country unless you have boots on the ground, and a lot of them. And the problem
we can't do it.
Yeah,
we just can't do it.
The problem is, no matter what we do, they're still going to be fighting each other, and whoever wins is still going to hate us. Let's say Assad wins, he's going to hate us for supporting the rebels. If the rebels win, they're still going to hate us because we're Americans, and we didn't support them enough. There's all kinds of reasons to hate Americans from their perspective. And the Russians are like, well, listen, we have a desperate need to transport oil. And we transport a lot of our oil and we get a lot of our technology processed in Syria. I've already talked several times about AQ Khan. These are the people that make the chips for the rockets. That's what they're losing. That's what the Russians are losing. That's what the Chinese will be losing. A lot of the optics that they do in China actually get ground down in Syria. So there's a tremendous business partnership going on that's being threatened, from the Russian side. Now, the Chinese get mad. So what? We just don't pay them. The Russians get mad. They're crazy enough to push that button. And, they are. Look at Putin. Look at he doesn't care. His goal is to make sure that Russia is dominant.
Now, they're more of a rational actor than that.
They are more of a rational actor, but if they have to push a button, they'll do that. They had the dead hand way back when in the 50s, and they still have it. So you're looking at people that you need to recruit to try to get this under control, and it's beyond solving now. So you have to step back and go, you guys need to fight. And when you draw that red line, you have just screwed yourself in foreign policy. You cannot be drawing red lines, and that's an error that George Bush did, and it's an error that Obama repeated. So when you're sitting here looking at a quagmire, at least in Iraq we could operate the way we wanted to operate militarily when we initially went in. In Syria, there's a whole lot of mountain ranges, a whole lot of desert. You have a lot of city to city fighting. That's a well-developed area of the world. So it's really just a mess.
We haven't solved anything, but unfortunately we're out of time.
We are out of time because it's one of these things. Lefty and I agree, and even my brother Joe agrees with Lefty. We need to stay out of it, and the more we stay out, the better we're going to be.
Yep.
Are you going to be playing anywhere?
I got a gig tomorrow night at Blue Moon in West Des Moines.
All right, everybody show up. It's a great time. He's a great artist and musician. He doesn't do a show like Miley does. That's kind of disappointing on my end.
Well,
he can't twerk very well.
I don't. I have the booty for it, but I don't have the shake.
You don't have the shake. All right. We want to thank all of our sponsors, Brian Leach and Tom Coates, for allowing us to keep this studio going and operational. We want to thank all of our listeners. I also want to thank Polk County GOP, Lubinas Law Firm, and Bertrosian Associates for sponsoring our show.
Thanks to our producer, Ryan. Does a great job on the booth.
Every week.
Every single week.
And he's reliable. I don't think he's been late once.
Not one time.
That's a good thing about having a conservative back there.
It's true.
As a liberal, he'd go,
well, he'd have some kind of bong rip thing going on, and who knows what would happen.
Oh yeah. Well, now I was on Ed's show here a couple of weeks ago. His producer's pretty good too, and she's a whack job liberal, worse than you.
Is that right?
Yeah, and she shows up all the time too. So I apologize to the liberals out there.
Well, they won't accept your apology anyway.
I know they
All
never
right.
do.
Hey, thanks everybody. We'll see you next week. Tuesday, 6 to 7, webcast1live.com. I'm Lefty for my good friend, the good Doc Bertroche. Good night and have a great week.
Hi, I'm Representative Tom Shaw, and I love these guys. Both of them.
Love these guys. Get over here. Love both of them.